Okay, people, I think we're live. So mute your microphones and let's start.
Let's go for the actual score. Europa Natural
Hey, welcome everyone. As you guessed it, it's a newbie doing the show tonight, but still very happy that that you're here joining us. So welcome to Europa Natural Law, a roundtable transmission dedicated to healing the madness, the badness, and the sadness plaguing our beautiful, bountiful world. Through regaining our sanity, reclaiming our inborn responsibility, and honoring our inherent responsibility, we can improve reality. I'm Oscar from Denmark, and joining me are, let's see if we can bring you up here. Group layout, is that it? Yes, perfect. Please introduce yourselves.
Jeff and Allie from the USA.
KRIS, evolveconsciousness.org is my site from Canada.
Param from the Netherlands, born in Amsterdam, but I live in France, Grenoble.
Cool, thanks everyone for being here. And the best way to start the show today would be to quickly, or not, doesn't have to be quickly, but to define the topic. And the topic of today is the principle of vibration. The principle of vibration being the third principle mentioned in the book, the KYBALION, that you can check out in the description. And the principle of vibration is something that I would define as the fact that everything is in wait, I have to ask, is it you, Param? Can I ask you to mute your microphone?
I sure can.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Yes, the principle of vibration. The principle of vibration states that everything vibrates and everything is in motion. And what does that mean? What does it mean that everything is in motion? It's this very old philosophical question about the nature of reality, that everything is in constant movement, everything is changing, right? But it's also a pattern that there is in reality, and this pattern of vibration is kind of also like an interference pattern. And I think I actually have a slide that I can bring up regarding that. Maybe sometimes the visual helps people to see what it is that we're talking about. So this is like the signature pattern of vibration, and you see it here in water. I think it is the first two, and then also in sand, and then I don't know if the fourth one is like a coral reef, and then the fifth one is like the brain, or like the neocortex, or the gray matter. So you see like that there's this pattern, and what is it with this pattern? Well, it's the signature pattern of vibration, and I'm not really satisfied with my definition of the principle of vibration. So please, someone, if not everyone, will be cool as well. Give it a go. What is the principle of vibration?
Quote comes to mind: surrender to change or suffer in a loop. So kind of looking at the greater implications of everything always being in motion. sort of that idea of not just everything being emotion, but that everything is constantly changing, both nature and the macrocosm and in the microcosm within ourselves, our emotional states, our mental states. It's always in flux, always in motion, and always in change. So change kind of being sort of like that, our experience of that motion. But yeah.
Thanks,
I got a
Ellie.
paragraph out of the KYBALION I could read just to go over it. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. This principle embodies the truth that everything is in motion, everything vibrates, nothing is at rest. Facts which modern science endorses and which each new scientific discovery tends to verify. And yet, this Hermetic principle was enunciated thousands of years ago by the masters of ancient Egypt. The principles explain that the difference between different manifestations of matter, energy, mind, and even spirit result largely from varying rates of vibration. From the all, which is pure spirit, down to the grossest form of matter, all is in vibration. The higher the vibration, the higher the position in the scale. The vibration of spirit is such an infinite rate of intensity and rapidity that it is practically at rest. Just as a rapidly moving wheel seems to be motionless, and at the other end of the scale, there are gross forms of matter whose vibration are low as to seem at rest. Between those poles, there are millions upon millions of varying degrees of vibration, from corpuscle and electron, atomic and molecular, to worlds and universes. Everything is in vibratory motion. This is also true on the planes of energy and force, which are but varying degrees of vibration, and also on the mental plane, whose states depend upon vibration. And even on the spiritual plane, an understanding of the principle with the appropriate formulas enable Hermetic students to control their own mental vibrations as well as those of others. The masters also apply this principle to the conquering of natural phenomena in various ways. He who understands the principle of vibration has grasped the scepter of power, which one of the says one of the old writers. Yeah.
So I think this is a concept also, I mean, just thinking of powers that be, that paragraph, the knowledge of this concept is one of the major ones that's used to wield power for evil, not just for good. Yeah, it's a pretty powerful concept. I mean, just looking into psychology and how it works with humans, keeping the population at a low vibrational frequency through media manipulation and other ways. I mean, it's a very powerful concept.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to explore the concept more. I'll just give KRIS and Param the encouragement to also give it a go at defining it, just so that it hits home hard. What is it that we're talking about? What is the principle of vibration? Even though, thanks Ali and Jeffrey for partaking in that exercise.
Yeah, I'll elaborate a bit. KYBALION states it simply in one sentence as nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Yeah, sorry, my son's beside me and he's excited for reading, so you might have...
He's vibrating too.
Yeah. He's using his voice, yeah, for sure. Hey. Okay. Yeah, so in the KYBALION, the second paragraph, it states it related to principle of polarity, that spirit is at one end of the pole of vibration, and then at the other end is matter, and in between there's various levels of vibration, different rates of vibration. And in the first paragraph, they say nothing is at rest, everything moves, vibrates in circles. So an important way to view this is in terms of frequencies. That's what they mean by circles, is that it's when you have a frequency like the sine wave, it goes up and then back down and then up again, so it completes a full cycle. But that can also be viewed as a circle. So the vibrations can be expressed through frequencies, which are hertz, and in music, everything can be expressed through hertz. And in computers, you have the megahertz of the processor and of the RAM and everything. So there's ways that we can more accurately measure vibration, and it's more perceptible, such as our voice is the most obvious one. And you can feel the voice if you yell into your hand or something. If you bang on a desk and you have sand, that's where you can get into cymatics, and various mediums and sounds can create patterns on that vibrating background that you put that medium that can fluctuate. And in the frequencies, like a lot of stuff in the universe we're probably not aware of, but it's there. And I just want to say one last thing. Sorry about my son. The frequencies, it says everything vibrates, but you have to get into you have to look at things from a particular perspective or a particular scale. Because if you look at a rock at the scale that we're looking at it, it's not moving. So it depends on what scale you're looking at it, then you're going to perceive, oh boy, well, somebody's not happy. You're going to perceive the vibration. But at a certain scale, no, it's not vibrating. But in the totality of reality, when you go at that different scale, well, that would be between the different poles, the one extreme or the other, you'll be able to, by shifting your scale, which is your perspective, looking at the larger or the smaller, you'll be able to determine that there is a vibration. But at certain perspectives and scales, you're not going to have the vibration there. But within that thing that isn't vibrating at its level of construct, because that's how everything is built on top, we have subatomics and the atoms, molecules, compounds, elements, and we have like humans, rocks. But when you get at the bigger level, that thing itself isn't moving in itself, but it's on a planet which is moving. So you can look at it in that perspective, from that larger perspective, that it's also moving, hence a vibration. But at the level that you're going to look at it in the thing in itself, as it's the way it's constructed as a rock, for instance, well, you're not going to have it moving there. But if you zoom out at a larger scale, well, you're on a planet and that planet's moving. So technically the rock is moving because it's part of the planet, which is moving. And if you go lower, well, you'll see that the atoms and the subatomic particles, well, they're moving. So it depends on what scale you're going to look at things. And it's not that it moves at every single scale, a thing in itself. So it depends, it's I want to bring that nuance that it depends on how you're going to look at it to see that it's vibrating, because at a certain scale and perspective, it's not going to be vibrating. All right, that's it.
That was just a tiny bit distracting.
I don't know how loud it was. You should have told me if it's super loud. Yeah, I would have just stopped.
I'm a father. I don't even hear kids whining.
I want
next...
to hear from Param as well. Can you give it a go as well, Param? What is the principle of vibration? What is the topic that we're talking about?
I managed to hear. Can you hear me all right? Cool. I did get a few words of KRIS. I find it very interesting how everybody can have a different take, a take on this on every principle, and on the one of vibration, and like on many others, I also have a hard time separating the principles from each other. I have the feeling they overlap sometimes, and can easily confuse the principle of rhythm with the principle of vibration. Anyway, my take on the principle of vibration is the one of the level of consciousness. Like in French, we say we're not on the same vibe, we're not on the same level of vibration, on the same frequency. And I also find very interesting what KRIS was saying about density, how we perceive as something to be solid, liquid, and or what's the next word? Etheric or gas. L'état gazeux, that's what you would say in French. Solide, aqueux, gazeux. And that would explain how some can, on Jeffrey's introduction with the power that it yields, and I find interesting it's maybe like a little okay, yeah, but like the special the children that have special powers, and they can control, and eventually, I think one example was that they could take pills out of a glass bottle and take them out. So they had a control of the frequency of how to vibrate, have something, the barrier that separates the solid barrier. If it vibrates with something, if you can eventually vibrate with the same frequency of the barrier, you can go through it. Anyway, I'd like to have your take on both this idea of frequency being on the same consciousness level of frequency, and the idea of density. And I think it's very interesting, the parallel of this life purpose to grow and frequency, and how we get rid of some kind of density as well.
I can jump in. Go ahead.
Okay, no, it's just that Ali mentioned that thing before, right? And I have the slide here about, oh, maybe it's a bit big. Can I make it smaller? Maybe like this. Yeah, truth versus perception. Perception not being reality, but our work is to align the two. I feel that was maybe related to what you were talking about, Param, and what Ali mentioned, and what KRIS said that you were willing to define. So if anyone wants to jump in and talk about that, that would be cool. I don't know if, does that make sense to bring this up now?
Yeah, because I think these next couple principles, they're pretty similar. Vibration, polarity, and rhythm. Jumping off of what he was saying before, but me and Oscar talked about this the other day. There's a cool video called "The Power of 10" that kind of, maybe he could pull it up, but depending on, I guess, vibration levels, like you could be riding a bike or running or driving a car, and the bacteria on the bottom of your shoe doesn't know that it's moving, just like we don't know, we can't feel what we're a part of that's bigger than us, that's moving. There's something bigger than us that's moving also, and we can't necessarily feel what it's doing. We're on a completely different plane of vibration than them. And yeah, that graphic's good because it shows basically right or wrong. The red wave being infrequent with the truth, basically, and the green wave being more aligned with the truth.
And just to, because we're probably going to use these words a lot, vibration, frequency. So when you're saying that the red line is infrequent, not to be like condescending, but what is it that you're saying? What does that mean, that it's infrequent?
It's less often in line.
Yeah. Intersecting less often with the straight line, which symbolizes the truth. And so raising the vibration, meaning you are increasing the amount of waves, that the amount of times the waves are intersecting with the truth, coming more into alignment with it, so to speak.
Since
Exactly.
we can't,
Yeah,
since
that makes sense.
since
Thanks
we're
for clarifying.
since we're vibrating, we can't always be aligned with the truth. So we have to try and, you know, it's constant work, you know, like obviously the red line, someone's being lazy there. They aren't working hard to keep themselves aligned, where the green line, you know, someone's doing the work to keep themselves in line.
And that suddenly gives a whole new level of depth to that saying of raising your frequency. So in this regard, raising one's frequency, which is something you hear a lot in the new age hippie movement arenas, is this thing of you have to have a high vibration, right? And this, it's not to say that it's all baloney, but here's something very tangible and concrete. Like it's easy to understand. I think that what we're talking about is that the white line here is illustrating truth, is like a depiction of truth, and then our perception are the wave, and the more frequent, meaning the more times your perception aligns with the white line, with the truth, the higher your like the closer you are to truth, like the more you're approaching knowledge and having understanding. You also wanted to touch on it, Kris, right? Or describe it.
Yeah, you could show my image. I remade Passio's image, a little more 3D, colorful. So yeah, what everyone was saying, it's a higher frequency of contact or alignment of your perceptions with quality truth. You know, you could say the truth of who scored a touchdown yesterday, and you know how much of that truth you got. But that's not really what we're talking about. When we're talking about aligning with truth and caring for truth, it's not trivial truth. It's about quality truths. So the things that matter, because truth is your alignment with, obviously the most important is moral truth, is going to determine the quality of our lives. So we have a care to embody that. I don't know what it says at the top because we got the Europa Natural Law logo there, but with our values and what is it? All good. All good. I didn't bother opening it on my computer. So what is right, good, true, and moral, and that results in greater embodiment of that truth in our lives. So our frequency of consciousness goes up, as we've been talking about. So in the blue, green versus red. When you're in the red, well, you have a limited perception of reality. So that's limited access to truth. And that's limited unity and embodiment with truth and of truth. And that's limited consciousness. You're on a lower frequency. And all that line and your intersection with it means you're intersecting with an aspect of truth in that great variability and multiplicity and diversity of what is in reality, what is true. And that's the contact point, what you're attaining and you're aligning with, or you're embodying by that frequency. So hence, the lower frequency has less contact, the green frequency has more contact, and the blue frequency has a higher contact. And yeah, in the KYBALION, it says in the last page, well, the version I have, the PDF, it says any mental state or condition are accompanied by vibrations, a portion of which are thrown off and which tend to affect the minds of others by induction. So the influence we have, so our mental state, our condition, well, the principle of mentalism, we can express our mental state or have emotions and have emotional outbursts and say things that can be true or false. And some people might not want to hear it, and it can be insulted and offended and feel judged. And then, well, that has an induction, and that transforms your inner state, because though that frequency itself, that frequency wasn't like, oh, the frequency, that specific 22.35 hertz hit my body or hit my eardrums and it made me this way. No, it's not that. It's just the representation of how that communication goes through the air. It has a certain frequency, and those that vibration is a sound which can be interpreted by our perceptual devices, our technologies of the eye or the ear, so in case of speaking, and then we hear that, and then we decode those vibrations as meaningful representations of symbols that we agree upon what they mean, because we say truth, but in another language, truth isn't actually a word, so it's just a sound to them, but they have an equivalent of a different sound, a different vocalization, a different word symbol to represent that same concept that we can all communicate about. And so that's what what is it? 1, 2, 3, fourth to last in that small chapter. I think it's only 3 pages, the chapter. So your mental state and vibrations is thrown off, and it affects the minds of the other person. Induction, because induction it's coming in. And oh, we got troublemaker coming back here. So, and then the third to last paragraph says, by a knowledge of the principle of vibration as applied to mental phenomena, one may polarize his mind at any degree he wishes, thus gaining a perfect control over his mental states and moods. So that's where you can choose, you know, you could be in a situation or an accident, and you can be in shock, or you can transform that shock and no longer be in shock and get over that mental state. So you can have, you're impacted, the body influences the mind influences the body, and in certain situations, you can I guess you can call it centering, you can recenter yourself to not be polarized to the stimulus in your environment. So whether it's an accident or someone being an asshole, or even like something where everyone else is like having fun and they're all having fun, well, you can control yourself and not get swept up in, like, say, I guess there's a positive hysteria maybe, or a negative hysteria. You know, well, the COVID mass hysteria that Matthias Desmond, you know, he coined that, and it became popular during that time to talk about how everyone just jumped on the bandwagon of the hysteria, of the fear. You know, you can be influenced by a positive thing, and you know, and maybe you'll think it's good because everyone around you is enjoying it, but you can recenter yourself and realize, oh, well, this thing's not actually good. Like, we can think of entertainment and all the being entertained and mesmerized and hypnotized by entertainment, and how that people feel good from it, and you can join into that, but then you can bring yourself back and use your mind, your mental state, to analyze that stimulus and what it's doing to you. So it can apply in negative ways, it can apply in positive ways, and not be swept up by the positive and not be swept up by the negative. And you can, that's what I interpret that sentence as saying, that we can have more control over our mental states and our moods, so our emotional states, hence the positive and negative, and have more control over it. Yeah.
I'd like to thanks, Chris. I'd like to kind of pick up on 3 things that we've mentioned so far, and so that they don't get lost in memory. So one thing Ali mentioned was that the concept of vibration is something that can be, if by those who have knowledge of it, used as an advantage against those who do not have it. So like lowering people's frequency or something to that effect is what you said. I'd like to kind of explore that a bit more. Then Param, you also spoke about like levitation, or like house, or like, I don't know if it was levitation, but like the physics of it, like how there's like there's like laws of physics, and there's how you can like affect matter.
That's the Flash, where he could put his hand through things by phasing out. You change the frequency that his body vibrates, and then he would pass through objects. That's pretty sci-fi to me. It's like,
yeah,
well, technically,
well, I mean,
you could say it's
I think it's something
possible,
we should.
but, yeah.
It'd be cool to kind of at least not let it just be like something we don't catch. So I just want to remind that it was something that was brought up, and then what you're bringing up here now, Chris, about being able to polarize yourself in the sense that you are deciding at what emotional vibration you want to be at, or something to that effect, like how this principle can be used to rule yourself, like the internal world. So I think those 3 things are already quite a lot, so maybe we should try to talk about those things. What do you say, people? Are you up for it? I mean, I think we should then take it in that order. What you were speaking about, Ali, with how it can be used against people, like if people are at like a maybe like in a fear state or like in a stressful state, right? And how that can be used to control them. I think that's a really interesting way to talk about this principle. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's sort of the method by which people are brainwashed into statism and going towards and believing in government, because it's really just from keeping people in a state of fear, people looking for security, they go towards big daddy or big mommy government. But then going back to what KRIS was saying too, through entertainment, through the media, that is sort of perpetuated by keeping people in these low vibrational states and in states of fear, sort of unconsciously, right? Because I mean, when people watch a movie or play video games, or not to say these things are inherently negative, people are unconsciously kept in that low vibration sort of state, because but while they're watching a movie, you may not think, okay, this is exactly what's going to be happening to me. Those themes sort of lie in the background, and then also even not through like inherently like negative or fearful stories and allegories. They're also, the populations are given these sort of stand-ins for these sort of concepts and these sort of things that we desire. So like we watch a movie and the hero, saves people by exposing the evil powers that be. People watch that and they sort of get that like vibrational satisfaction, so to speak. But then once that's satisfied, they don't see that, or they don't see how in their day-to-day lives, or how in reality that needs to be fulfilled. So it's kind of, again, it goes back to that power differential through knowledge, knowing how these vibratory states work and how these frequencies work. There's so much depth of manipulation there. And also with through trauma, I think Jung talks about like psychic energy, and also relates to sort of like the Eastern thought of like prana, this vibratory energy exists within all of us. And so both through like the media and entertainment, so through these subconscious manipulations of this fear sort of building, and also through actual trauma through our childhood, and whatever trauma we experience in life, that sort of energy, these vibrations can get stuck, and it's like frozen energy. And so that's like a manifestation of a lot of like neurotic symptoms, varying in scale, where it could just be just like small little things that we do we're not aware of, or on a affecting people's lives in a greater way to where they can't function and work. But yeah, it really comes down to that, again, the knowledge differential, the power differential of the manipulators being able to use that in different ways, and then also on a personal level of people's experiences not being aware. We only have our 5 senses to be aware, but we can, once we open up and raise our vibration, we can feel truth. We're able to care. We're able to enact our will to change and reprogram ourselves. But it's all.
Oh, I really like that last thing, because what you said first really ties well into what KRIS was saying, right? With the like how in fear you're not really vibrating at a high level. Whereas if you have love for truth, you'll align your perception to it. But then the other part, what you said about like when you're healing, or when you're able to be aware with your body and have this like sense what's going on, and you're kind of like vibrant, like you're alive and you're there. So I like that take on it. That's really cool.
How dare you interrupt my girlfriend, Oscar?
Fuck, I did it again. Yeah. Quick side note is like we did have some trouble with the forum in the group the past week, and it all started with my interruption of Derek, which happened live last Sunday. I'm pretty sure Derek and I are good. Like, and if you watch the show, you'll see that nothing really like extremely bad happened, and like he just asked me to think about that. I interrupted him, and he even got an apology, which I still feel that it's something, a negative trait I have. I do tend to interrupt people and cut them off in their stories. I know you were joking now, Jeffrey, but I just want to kind of say that this is something I do a lot, and I apologize for it. But in the group Natural Law, we've had to kind of have a pause because it did turn out that there was a lot of bad vibes, in the sense that people did feel bothered, or like did get angry with each other, and that's something we can address as well. We could talk a bit about that. I don't know if it's too much of an interjection right now, but maybe we should. Maybe we should do it. I don't know. I think we can also move on to.
We could keep going on this.
Okay. Well, do you want to be talking about the more about this, the power differential? How?
Oh, no, I think I'm good. I think it pretty much pretty much covered it.
Yeah, I think also something that's cool to mention is when we're talking about love and fear, we are talking about consciousness being receptible towards truth, or being more like in opposition towards it, and in a contraction sense, so that we're and yeah, it's just a short mention, and that how that leads to different results.
Yeah, so the powers that be, since we don't live in like small tribes anymore, the powers that be have had like generations and billions of dollars and trillions of dollars to kind of like pacify us with like bad vibrations, trying to replicate what we used to have in the tribe. And it's very easy to end up like how our community is now, how our society is now. It's very easy to do that when you don't know that you're being lied to, and the infrequency with the truth definitely leads to stagnicity and just emptiness, and not really understanding like what our role is here on Earth. Are we just really supposed to be wage slaves for a government, or it's very hard when you don't know you're being lied to.
Yeah, it's depressing. It's fucking depressing to be yeah. Sorry, I think it's such a great thing. I'm so glad we're talking about it. Keep it coming. Sorry for interrupting again.
How dare you interrupt me? It'll go away with time. I used to interrupt people way more than I do now. It just used to. No, way more than I do now.
One way I see us being held at a you could say it like like in ignorance, or in held in that not able to live it fully and to the highest degree, is that there's this belief in change being impossible, and that kind of goes full circle, because change again is the way we experience everything is in motion, right? Everything is in vibration. So if we know about that and we can align ourselves with that truth, we can work with it, right? And we can actually create change, or we can affect positive influence in the world, and and I think that I'm getting all mumbly in my brain right now, so I'm gonna stop.
People forget how powerful we actually are. There's a lot more of us than there are, there's a lot more good than there is evil. And, especially, with like around, plant-based diets and veganism and stuff, so many people are like, oh, what am I going to change? Just me not eating meat or whatever, and it's definitely a fallacy to think that way, and it's definitely not gonna help. You know, just thinking, oh, me just being one person, why be an activist? Why do anything? Because I'm just one person. It's and they've taught us to think that way. Honestly, the state has taught us to think that way because they don't want any dissenters. They don't want anybody getting a loud enough voice to change, because we could change overnight. Everything could change overnight if we all got on the same frequency. And that's something that they're very scared of.
Well, and I think it's going back to the idea, surrender to change or suffer in a loop. Change is inevitable, right? If everything is in motion, then it's just a matter of us sort of like clarifying our will and connecting with care in order to be a part of that change, because change is happening regardless. Either we're sitting on the sidelines or we are participating in it, so to speak.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote by a book where it says like that the state it's gonna die, like it is going to end, but is it gonna take with us? You know, is it gonna take us with it? Is what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, are we going to fight that change, or are we going to work with the fact that this is like, are we going to work with the natural flow of things, of how the greatest positive like state of reality can be, which is freedom. And I'm gonna stop talking again because sorry, yeah. But
You good?
Sick slide, by the way, Chris.
Thanks. Yeah, I made that 11 years ago.
Oh, wow.
When I was getting into content creation and doing infographics. Yeah, and I'll add a bit on that. You know, people say, what can I do? Well, that's just, you've been taught to be helpless. You've learned to be helpless. And that's the learned helplessness. You know, the elephant who was born and tied to a little stake and they couldn't move at the time, but then they grow up and they're powerful enough to rip the stake out. But they learned that to be helpless when they're tied to the stake, that they can't move. And that's how people have learned to be helpless, that they can't do anything, they have no power. So it's disempowering. And, you know, that just keeps you stuck in, well, whatever the way the world is now, whatever the way everyone accepts, well, that's the way it's going to forever be. And yet then they think that they're powerless, that they can't do anything, and that nothing can change, when that's absurd, because things have always changed. The way things are now hasn't been the way it's always been. And, you know, the only way things can change regarding the human world that we've created as all humans, from the past to the present going into the future, is individuals changing. So the only way things do change is when individuals change. And you can either be conscious, so use that mental state to control your behavior and choose how you're going to live, or you can be moved by others, moved by the influences of others, moved by the will of others. And that's what slavery is. That's the world we live in, is where the will of others are superseding our will, and we've accepted to subsume our will to the will of others. And that's especially true for people who take on the job of an order follower, to be paid to do this to a higher level, where they're literally paid to not think about the behavior that they're told to do, and to just do it for the paycheck, because if they don't do it, then they won't get their paycheck. And so they're completely subsuming their will to the will of another, and on the chain of whatever agendas get put forth, and then through politics, and then through the like police force or military, and then go here, do this, and then they go there and they do this. And these are the laws that we created because we are God men and we make laws in the universe. And then they just say, okay, well, those are the laws, I'm going to enforce those laws. They don't think about whether they're right or wrong. So they're not taking advantage of that capacity within them of thinking. and that's why they, a slave, I think etymologically comes from Slav and a robot. So, oh no, a robot the other way. The robot, I think, comes from Slav and slave. So when you're not thinking, you're just engaging in programmed behavior. So you're acting like a robot, and that's what they do. They've given up the greatest gift that we have, and that's our free will and our capacity to think. And they're deciding not to think for themselves. They're only following protocol, just like the medical establishment does, as was seen in the COVID scam, where they just followed protocol of just ventilators, restraining people, putting drugs in them that didn't help them, made them die quicker, hurt them. And it's just, well, we got our protocol, I'm just doing my job. I got my protocol. Well, it's, C3PO. I am a protocol droid. And well, that's what you are. You're a fucking protocol droid. That's all you do is you follow protocols. Someone decided a procedure of steps to follow, and you follow those steps, and you're not questioning them, and you're not refusing them, because what matters more to you, your God is money, and that's what you want. So if you want to keep your job, some people don't, but the majority of them just do it because they want to keep their job, because they have their personal lives matter more than what they might be doing to other people which aren't in their personal lives. So it's not in that satanic ego I circle of identification and compassion. They're only identifying with them. They would care if it was happening to their kid, but since it's happening to someone else's kid or someone else's parent or someone else in general, oh, well, I'm just doing my job, and they just follow the procedure, follow the protocols, and just be robots. So they're slaves. They're mental slaves because they're not thinking.
Yeah, it's like, will we get trapped in the revolution, or will we participate in the evolution? I mean, that's kind of like we were saying, everything is constantly in change. Power struggles, it's that sort of like what the supplied solution for change, this revolution. Okay, like we can look at like movements like Occupy Wall Street's getting co-opted, and anti-police sentiments. While yes, police are, the whole idea is inherently immoral, there is that stand-in given of, okay, well, liberals who are anti-police, we got to all participate in this revolution. What was the idea of a revolution? Revolution is cyclical. The whole idea is we're going to end up doing the same thing over and over again, versus evolution rising out of that cyclical nature. You're interrupting with your face now, Oscar.
I'm trying to highlight you. I'm new to this, so sometimes I think I could just press a button and it will highlight the speaker. But then I'm always the one coming up. I'm sorry, but yeah, this was touching about what KRIS was speaking on, about being a mover or being moved, which I found that really interesting. Like, how are you engaging with the motion that is? There is just this motion. Everything is in motion. But are you just being moved like a pawn, or are you partaking in that? Are you a magician? But sorry, not completely, because you were speaking about the revolution and being a cyclical thing. But that also, in a way, we are kind of, if we're not aware that there is these cycles in nature, we will kind of just be moved by it, and we will just believe that we'll create some everlasting change in a revolution. But then you'll see, no, we just come back to something similar. Like, yeah, we can, like, yeah, there's examples of revolutions kind of creating in the moment something radical, but then it doesn't really last that long, right?
Well, they don't deal with the root cause. If you don't deal with the root cause, which is in the mind and the beliefs and the ideas, the information, then yeah, 300 years later, you'll be back where you were, or in a worse spot.
Yep.
So
What do
maybe
you
now
think,
is
Go ahead.
that I'm scared.
Go ahead, Prom.
Yeah, I think the revolution is like we say planets revolve around each other. I mean, it's like it comes back to the same point. So be careful what you wish for. Is something to revolve and to come back to the same point again. I like what KRIS just mentioned. I like what everybody said, of course, but regarding truth, the quality of truth, that's interesting because I mean, truth about the trivial things and important things, essential things is quite different, and then that brings us back to how to raise the level of our the frequency or the level of our consciousness. Is it brings us back also to the two our two currencies, the quality of our attention, what we pay attention to, and the time we spend. So it's also the quantity. I thought it was interesting that he associated the word quality of attention to truth, but also the quality of what kind of truth, the truth about what. And I'm trying to bring us back to the principle of vibration, which is difficult because it's very similar to the rhythm, and I just remember in French we say when people are not on the same wavelength, we say on n'est pas sur la même longueur d'onde. So again, it brings us back to the idea of levels of consciousness, and like we demonstrated earlier, how we align our perception to truth. So how frequently is our perception aligned to truth? And of course, we live parallel worlds, around us. Just people are not on the same wavelength, and it's pretty tough to just adjust. Okay, you're on this way. Length wave or wavelength, sorry, and bring it back to it wasn't so sci-fi what I just mentioned, but because the idea of density is a question of the level of density is also associated to vibration. It's not so much that you could go through a wall. If you can vibrate the same frequency of the matter of the wall, you could eventually go through it. But it's the idea that I remember PASSIO touching upon this principle and just saying that everything is in movement, but so nothing is completely dead. That's also the idea of solid. So this illusion of solid things, this is where I was coming back to, and the idea that the higher the frequency from solid, liquid, then it becomes like a candle. You see it's burning. It's a solid thing. It has a thread, but it melts, so it becomes liquid, and then gas, and then heat and light. I had this really strange association with how our diet, our level of consciousness, but also our diet. Like we eat solid. From solid cooked meals, we go to more rare, not uncooked meals, but also start juicing. So you're moving from solid to liquid, and eventually moving to breatharian. And I think this is interesting because you're taking in something that's on a different level of vibration. That's my little take here. Oh, sorry, I didn't take the. Did you hear me good? I didn't put it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Pam. Yeah, I think what the story of the hand going through a wall, or whether it be like through you can get something to levitate. It's all kind of related to the physics of it, and I think that's an interesting area to explore as well. Like, what is the nature of matter? Is matter just an illusion? And if so, what does that mean? If matter is just an illusion, should we then just say, well, then it doesn't matter what happens here? And
Matter doesn't matter.
Matter does matter. And it's
And,
not an illusion. And things are solid. It's not that. This is a misconception I'm glad was brought up, that I want to emphatically state that there is such a thing as solidity. That is the fact of the organization of things from lower levels leading to the organization and construction to higher levels, and then you get solidity. So you could say that the first thing I opened with is at a certain scale. Well, if you go at a lower scale, you look in and yes, there's 99.99% space between the electrons in orbit allegedly around the nucleus, which has protons and neutrons. So everything is mostly space, yes, at that level. But the fact that the subatomic particles coalesce and organize and structure themselves into atoms, they form elements, they form compounds and molecules. The higher you go up in scale, then the emergence of the property of solidity or liquid or gas emerges. Things emerge. They were not present before, en tant que tel, so to speak. And as you go higher up in the scale, the properties emerge that were possibly not present before. So these are emergent phenomenon, emergent properties. And solidity is there. It's just that if you want to zoom in, like scales of 10, well, then you're going to zoom in and you're going to see, wow, there's a lot of space here. So nothing is solid. Well, no, where you're looking at, yeah, it's mostly space. And then you could say, well, is it really space? Is outside the orbit of the planet or any planet, is it really space? Oh, well, no, actually it's filled with other stuff. You could say it's filled with energy, filled with something else, there's always stuff there. There's the ether or something. So nothing is actually empty space. There's no such thing as space even out there. I read something about that like a month ago. I don't remember. It was in the Firefox Pocket things. I like these physics and science articles from the recommended stories of Firefox. It's interesting. So you go on like these sites like Aeon or Big Think, and people talk about stuff. They write about it for magazines and journals or websites. And so yeah, one of the things was the space isn't actually space. There's no such thing as just space. There's always something there. So even at the molecule, it's not just empty space. There's something there anyways. And yeah, so that's just what I wanted to clear up, is that there is solidity. It's not an illusion. Matter matters. And I have an article, an etymological twisting and connection that I called Mother Nature, something about Mother Nature in the womb of the universe. And in there, well, if you look into the etymology of mother and matter, well, they're linked etymologically. I don't remember what it is, but yeah, they're etymologically. I think matter comes from mother. And well, if you look at matter and the Milky Way, the ancient Egyptian goddess Nuit, La Nuit, well, it was a representation of the stars in the sky, and that's the blackness that we're birthed through. Things come from nothing. So you could look at birthing a child. Well, it comes into the world through the womb, through that dark space, and then the child comes out, and everything is birthed through the mother nature that comes out of there. And that's why there's a lot of reverence for the night sky, and that was one of the goddesses. Yeah, there you go. The story of matter and nature and the mother's womb. So that's in my earlier work, like 11 years ago, I was doing a lot of like etymological breakdowns and intermingling and creating stories. So this is one of the things I weaved out of looking into the etymology. And yeah, matter matters, because that's what is being birthed through that womb, that darkness, that abyss. Because that's what the darkness. That's why you have the light is representative of the masculine that's emitting, and the darkness would be the opposite of light. and that's where the feminine has characteristics. The symbology of the feminine is associated with the darkness, and the symbology of the masculine is associated with the light, because the womb and the Milky Way and the black hole at the center, that was viewed as the emanation for aspects of the universe. So it's all birthed through the womb of Mother Nature, Mother's womb, and that's what matter is, and matter does matter. I guess that's what I was talking about in that first paragraph there.
But there's at some level you're saying the illusion is there, but then the more like the higher up you come, you start seeing solidity emerge and liquid. So like there's this misinterpretation of it. You're saying, right? There's
but even what does the word illusion mean? Doesn't the word illusion mean something that's not there, that's not real?
I think it means like game, or like, oh no, sorry, what it means, something that's not there. Yeah. So
okay.
It's true.
So is it not there? If you look at your house, if you want to forget about all this, whatever this spiritual talk or whatever, and you just look at, okay, forget about everything. Consider yourself just you're purely into physical reality. You have no understanding of any other principles of vibration or quantum mechanics or anything, and you're just looking. You have a house. Is your house real? Is that an illusion? Well, your house is real. It's not an illusion. Well, what's in your house? Well, your house is mostly space. It's just a shell around, so you can separate the outside world, which is harsher aspects of nature, the weather, the sun, the cold, the hot, and you can more control that separated space as its own subclimate, it's a child within the parent of the larger aspect of the universe, like a planet is. And so within the planet, well, we can build houses, habitats, shelters, and we can control and shelter ourselves from the harshness of reality. But in that house, it's mostly space. So does that mean the wood and the plastic isn't real? That those are illusions? That's not really there? So what we're talking about in a house isn't really a house, it's just nothing? Well, no, when you're talking about a house, well, the house is made up of metals and plastics and wood and glass, and in between all those things, well, there's space, and that's where you live. You don't live in the wood, you don't live in the metal, you don't live in the glass, you don't live in the plastic, you live in the space in between. So just because there is space doesn't mean the house isn't there. Well, it's the same thing for reality. That's how everything is built up. You have as I mentioned earlier on, it's from the smaller level. You can go from a unified field of energy, then to the subatomic particles, to the atomic particles, to compounds, molecules, and it all gets organized and structured, and it gets constructed into higher levels. And when you get to a higher enough level, well, you have you, and then you build a house. Well, the house is still there. Just because there's space doesn't mean it's an illusion that it's not there.
I think the misunderstanding is then that one denies the existence of matter. It denies that things are actually like that solidity, that there's any reality to it, which seems insane when you think about it, because it's just like so under your nose. But I guess insanity is possible, and you can be in complete denial of matter actually existing. But I guess if you get a punch in your face, then you realize, or like if you get a hammer on your foot or something. But I'm also thinking like a lot is possible with a materialistic worldview, where the only thing you believe in exists physically is matter, that there's no such thing as anything non-material. And I think that also speaks to the fact, okay, that there is a lot of truth in that, like you can work with matter, and it is true, but there's also other worldviews, and one of these worldviews, which is like the more metaphysical one, is that there's more to matter, that matter is not all there is. And I think the way that I go to it is to say, well, to believe that there's only matter is to reject that there is anything else, right? But to say that there's something else is not necessary to say that matter does not exist. You can still have a scientific mindset and study the natural sciences, like the physics, biology, and such, and then also be open and study something that is not studied by the materialistic worldview or materialistic scientist. Does that make sense? That you can like include the material worldview in the spiritual or like metaphysical worldview, but it's not really that spiritual if you're just straight up denying that solid material. Yeah.
I just want to correct if I unwillfully implied or suggested that gravity doesn't exist, or solidity doesn't exist, or that matter didn't matter. It's just the idea that vibration, when viewing something that's solid, our perceptions trick us into thinking that we think there's total stillness or total emptiness. That's what I understand by the principle of vibration. Not that that there's no gravity, or that would imply another principle, I guess. Or total stillness, yeah, that maybe implies also the principle of rhythm. Anyway, I just wanted to just the idea that to suggest that what we perceive something to be solid or totally still isn't. It's just it vibrates at a certain frequency, so that we perceive it as something that's solid. And then different vibration, we could perceive it as something that's being liquid, and so forth. I see both that and also the idea of vibrating on several similar and different levels of consciousness. And still, I have the feeling I'm still trying to get out of the murky waters, because I have the feeling all those principles are overlapping each other somehow, in the same way how the 8 transgressions, because it's a bad example, but I mean, if you're raping somebody, also how do you say, assaulting. So there's the combination. I mean, it's different to separate all the principles very clearly and distinctly in everyday life. I'll try to find another example how different principles overlap each other in a way that it's different, very difficult to delineate. I'll give the.
These are murky waters, as you're saying, Param, but I think also we can arrive at an understanding of them. So as soon as people talk about quantum physics or string entanglement, I'm always like, what the fuck, but I don't understand what is like, it gets kind of confusing, and I don't think it necessarily has to be so confusing, although things can be mind-blowing and things can be amazing and awake wonder in you. I don't think that the universe is like a torture chamber that you don't understand how it works. Like I think you can understand how nature works, or the universe works. And when we're trying to understand the physics and when we're trying to understand matter, there is this paradoxical thing where when you're looking when you're looking at a certain level, it just doesn't appear to be behaving as matter. But again, appearances and the actual the factuality can be two different things, and I think it's super cool that we're exploring it, and I think it does take a bit of intellectual courage to at least try to deal in these waters and to step into the unknown, because of course the easiest thing is to say there's only matter, matter exists, and then all of that quantum physics and quantum mechanics is just baloney. but when you actually try to change your worldview about it, it does require some so, like, you need to kind of let go of some beliefs about it, right? There's something that needs to change, and I think myself, Duke, is not that I'm like there yet where I get it or I figured it out, but I like what you were saying before, KRIS, about that it's like an emerging level. So like at a certain level, it doesn't seem to be like that there's anything, because there's just so much space between the electrons in the atom, right? But that doesn't mean that there isn't anything there. And then even when you we've been referencing a bit to this video, the power of 10. Maybe we should show it. But it's basically like, should I bring it up? It's a bit long.
It reminds me the other day when we were reading the KYBALION, when it was talking about the machine, the vibrating machine, and the faster it goes, at a certain point, we're seeing it as this machine vibrating, and then at a certain point it just starts, it doesn't look like what it used to look like before, because it's going even faster, and then it just explodes into matter and atoms and quarks and all this stuff, which, like, I'm in the same boat with all the quantum physics stuff. I have no clue. I've had people try and explain it to me in different points in time, but I haven't personally dove in. But it's definitely similar. And yeah, the Powers of 10 video is pretty powerful.
Is it too loud?
It's good. It's good.
Oh yeah. But I think this.
The picnic near the lakeside in Chicago is the start of a lazy afternoon, early one October. We begin with a scene 1 meter wide.
Or we could talk over the video, because it's pretty self-explanatory. He's just saying you zoom out and then he's going to zoom in. So he's not really saying anything too meaningful, as I remember.
KRIS, sorry to interrupt, but I have the feeling this is more an illustration of the law of the principle of correspondence, like infinite small and infinite great.
Well, like you said, they all interrelate. All the principles are intertwined. When you're talking about one, usually you're going to be talking at least about one or two within that one principle. And some of them, you're talking about one, like you can bring in all the other 6 as well.
All right, okay. Well, I'm repeating myself. I'll shut up.
Oh, it's all good. Like I said, we can talk over it.
Yeah,
it's
let's
just
do that. Let's
people
do that.
can watch it. So yes, it's correspondence. But again, correspondence, it doesn't mean that something is exactly that other thing. It's a likeness. It's a similarity. So likeness is not isness. I know people want to apply it's a principle of correspondence. That means if something over here, I observe it this way, that means over here, because I see 2 analogous properties, then I can also see that. So I'll call it X and X prime. So in X, you have X prime property, and in Y, you have a Y prime property. So you could say, oh, look, they're both similar in this way. And then you're going to see an X double prime, that's another property. So then you're going to assume in Y double prime that Y double prime exists as a property, and you're going to automatically draw a conclusion that, well, because it's in X and it's in Y in this sense, then because it's in X in another sense, well, it's also in Y in another sense. But that's not how you apply. That's called belief. When you apply, I call it blind correspondence, or it's also in fallacies. You can look at it. It's the false analogy, or analogy fallacy, where you're just going to assume something is. But this is how the scientific process is done, where you can look at something and posit the possibility that it exists in something else because of correspondence. So correspondence, the principle of correspondence is used in scientific discoveries, but the point is you have to discover, like I was mentioning, X double prime and Y double prime. Well, you discovered X double prime in one thing, as that property, and you can say, oh, maybe because they're related at the prime, at one property, X prime and Y prime, you're going to look at X double prime. You're going to say, well, is Y double prime there? maybe let's investigate, let's see if it is there. But people aren't doing that because they don't know how to think properly. So what they're doing is they're just concluding automatically that because one property or two or three properties is in one place, then they're going to project that into the other place, even though they haven't discovered it. They're just going to assume it's there, and they're just going to apply blind correspondence, which is the analogy fallacy, a false analogy. And that's an error in thinking because, well, you haven't discovered that truth. Maybe it is true that that other property is there, analogous and corresponds to the other one, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is. It's not a necessity. It's a principle to help you discover truth in reality. And until you actually discover it, it's not that it automatically is that way. So not all things can be related, even
But one thing I'm reminded of now that I'm seeing like the visual of like you're really out in space is even at that level, everything is in motion, right? Everything is moving at that point. Yeah, now you see like the kind of like the whole Milky Way there. That's just amazing to meditate upon. Is like, whoa, everything is just moving, man. Sorry for interrupting.
Well, that's what I said at the beginning, is that it depends on the scale. So that rock isn't moving itself. If you in the frame of reference that you're looking at it as you on the Earth, the rock isn't moving. But if your frame of reference, your scale, you zoom out, you'll see that the rock is on a planet, and the planet is moving in several ways, several frames of motion. So the rock is moving. So it depends on how you want to look at it. So just like solidity, yes, there is solidity, and if you look at it a different way, well, okay, well, it's made up of smaller things, and then there's space in between those things. So it's not completely solid, yes, at that scale. But as you make things bigger, you have emergent properties like solidity. Back to the house. Does the house not exist just because there's mostly space in your house and the material isn't actually there? Well, no, the material is there, and it made the house, and the house is there too. And you brought up the double slit experiment. I saw you sneakily sneak that in at least like 5 times there, Oscar. And this is another thing that people are in bullshit about. So you see the top frame. He says, oh, I'm not looking. So there's 2 slits, and it's making a wave interference pattern. And then he looks, and it's not making the wave interference pattern. It's just showing up as like two slits. Well, two interference, 2 lines of interference with the back plate. But that's not actually how the experiment works. Now the observer, so people would think of it, what do you think, that just by not looking at the moon that it disappears? Is that the power you have over reality? No, that's not how it works, but that's how those images convey things.
That's true. That's how the images convey it, which is it's not true.
And
but
you
it's
get
funny.
into the new age bullshit, and people believe this, that they believe that they create their own reality and that everyone's reality is a creation of their own mind. And that's not how it works. Complete bullshit. And when you actually look at the experiment, so if people haven't looked into it, do you think that the people doing the experiment, they were looking at individual electrons passing by a slit, and then when they don't look, it creates a different pattern? No, your eyes can't even see those fucking electrons. They're too small. You can't use your eyes. So what was the observer? Oh, well, they're using technology. But what was the observer? People think it's a camera. It's not a camera. The observer is a misnomer. It's actually a detection device. So if you have two slits and you pass electrons, it's going to go through one or the other, right? So the wave particle duality is still there. But the point is that if it goes through one or the other, it's not going through both at the same time, which is a hypothesis that some people say. And you know how they get the interference pattern to change? So as it goes through as a wave and it creates that interference pattern, what they're doing, the observer down here, to detect which one it goes through, because that's what they got to know. Did it go, if they observe it went through the top one or the bottom one, they have to know which one it went through. So if they can see when they pass one electron, they control one electron, it goes through as a wave, and they're going to see which one it goes through. Well, if you have a detector, it's actually an absorber, because how can you detect something if it doesn't go to your device and absorb it? Just like that back plate. Well, it's absorbing it on the back plate. When it creates an impact, that it absorbs the energy, and then it creates a visual representation of those impacts. So they scatter all over the place. They actually scatter all over the back plate, but there's the pattern that emerges is that there will be more that impact in certain lines, but they're actually impacting all over the place, but they group in certain patterns, and that's the interference pattern versus just the two-slit pattern. So the two-slit pattern emerges when you're, or just one slit on the, one line on the background or two, depends on where you're detecting it. So if you're putting your detection plate, well, when it comes through, well, it's going to be detected and then it's gone. It can't continue afterwards and then create that interference pattern. That's why when you're fake observing it, you're not actually observing it, you're actually just detecting it. When the detection happens, well, it can only be going through the one that you detected, and it doesn't go through the other one. So every time you send them through, they're not going through the one that you're detecting it. It's only possibly going through the other one, because the one where your detector is, when it goes through that slit and then it hits your detector, it can't hit the wall afterwards because it's already been absorbed. That energy has already been absorbed by your detector. So it's only going through one slit. So it's only going to make that one slit on the back. And if you take that detector away, well, then they're going through both slits, and it's going to create that interference pattern because you don't know which one it's going through. So it is still wonderful and mysterious, the wave particle duality, how things go from a wave and then it coalesces as a particle, and until it does, it's like going as a wave and interfering.
But this meme is bullshit, is what you're saying.
Yeah, the whole observer thing is a misnomer. That's all I was getting at. Yeah, the observer thing.
You're saying I got a bad meme here? Dang.
Yeah, well, there's lots of those on the internet, you know.
Disinfo agent.
But I mean, this is the power of 10 visual that we've been having here and I'll just let it run through because it's really cool. And now it's just gonna zoom in, and yeah, it's showing the difference in levels, like the macro and the micro.
I remember. Just leave it on for our internet audience, but I've seen it. But Chris, I'm just curious. I just want to know if like the laws of nature, when it observes, it doesn't become stage fright. Doesn't have stage fright. It doesn't change its behavior when not observed, or when observed instead of not.
Well, what's observing? Well, that's what I'm saying is the misnomer is that even referencing it as an observer. So one thing you might not know is that this has been done with light, so photons, which aren't like a particle of matter. It's just energy, right? Light. But it has a photon, and it behaves like a wave and a particle. And it's been done with electrons, and they've done it up to buckyball size molecules. So they can do it with atoms, and they can do it up to I think it's the maximum, the molecule, the buckyball, Buckminster Fuller. I think he hypothesized, and then it was discovered, a molecular structure, as it's called, the buckyball, and or the fullerene is another name for it. So that's a larger part of matter, but at a certain point is that it doesn't work. So you go to a large enough scale of the thing you're trying to do the double slit experiment with, and then it doesn't work anymore because there's a I forgot the term. I thought of it a few minutes ago, but there's the emergence of properties. There's a scale change. There's I forget the term, but yeah, when you go up to in the scales, so this is referred to as classical physics, right, at the level we live at, and then there's quantum physics at the smaller scale. And boundary. There's a boundary scale. So at a certain scale, there's a boundary where things shift from operating as in a quantum mechanical physics, and they move towards the classical physics. So you could look at that as Newtonian physics. And then the quantum scale stops operating at the larger scale. And when you go to the quantum scale, well, the Newtonian larger scale stops operating at that smaller scale. And you can go in between. So in those between the poles, you know, as the first chapter, the first page of the chapter on vibration was saying, the pole of spirit and matter, different words. You could look at them as the same thing and just different frequencies or different states. And when you go from the smaller to the larger, at a certain point, what's happening at a smaller scale stops happening when you get to the larger scale. So this has been done with the double slit experiment. Just an interesting thing that's been done with things that are larger than just an electron or a neutron, and it's gone up to the size of molecules.
That was a really trippy video though. I got like totally whoa watching that. Yes, we've kind of reached the usual time of the chat, and I thought now would be a good time to look at the comments section, see if there were some interesting questions written by the people who are watching. So I'm just gonna read the first that comes up here. The first was by the Sovereign Cyborg Project. Ali, I love that explanation of frequency, similar to the universe being self-same across scale. That is akin to a scalable vector graphic where the laws are like properties and they pervade reality as the ratio pi would be present in circles. Whoa, that was next level. I can't really bring them up on screen because sorry about that. That would have been more cool. But I don't know if anyone's like, because there's a lot of comments here. Should I read one more up, or should we speak about this one?
Read some more.
Just go through them all.
Okay, well, then this have a little patience because this is some lingo that I don't completely understand.
Don't you see them in StreamYard? And you should be able to click on them, and then they show up.
Yeah, they're not here for some reason.
No, because I'm not connected to the account. I did like a
oh, he's not an admin. He's an admin. Yeah. You guys know about the Hutchinson effect?
Do not know about the Hutchinson effect.
Going more down to the physical level, there's a guy, a doctor named Hutchinson, who can bend steel. Like, he uses frequencies in a room, and he could melt steel with no heat. He could bend objects, metal objects, with just using different sound waves and frequencies. And you can watch his videos, and they're pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, just to be clear,
I'm sure KRIS knows about it.
On him, he did it by accident once, but the mistake he made is that he did not record his frequency, and he was never able to reproduce the experiment. But it is on video, so people can be skeptical. But so he did it, except he wasn't able to reproduce it. He was just like randomly testing stuff, and he got one that like worked, and then that's it. And he wasn't able to reproduce it, unfortunately.
The videos are pretty wild. You can just literally watch a flat piece of metal, and it will just start moving like this and break apart, and some steam will happen.
I've seen
on just a normal table. Yeah.
But I think I also am kind of skeptic about it, because I think there's need to be able to reproduce it, and of course then you have the whole.
He's got dozens of videos of it.
You can take
maybe there was one
kind of world point of perspective where you're like, oh, it's like a secret they're hiding from us, so that's why there's only this YouTube video regarding it, right? But I mean, it is really interesting, and I don't want to discard it either. The Hutchinson's effect. I can see if I can try to pull something up there.
I found him through Judy Wood, who has a pretty interesting explanation of what happened on 9/11. She's a scientist who did a evidentiary, report on what happened at 9/11, and it's pretty interesting stuff. But she thinks that the same thing, that the Hutchinson effect, she thinks that's what they used on the towers. It's pretty gnarly stuff.
Space weapons and Tesla Tesla death rays and stuff.
Yeah, Tartarian freaking ether weapons. But I haven't
that's
seen
also
anyone.
again the physics aspect of vibration, right? How does vibration relate to how physics works, and also how can that knowledge be used in war, like directed energy or like sound or like even radiation, right? And
Free
this
energy.
this is the book by Dr. Judy Wood that I'm showing right now, because that is some really interesting research. And I not really gonna find something about the Hutchinson's effect right now, but I'm guessing it's written like that, just as it sounds, right? The Hutchinson's effect, and you can find some interesting videos and also images how metal that you wouldn't like imagine can be
Manipulated.
manipulated that way is manipulated in really like mind-blowing ways. And as KRIS says, there needs to be like before we can make a conclusion, we need to have proper data, and one of those things is that can it be reproduced? I thought maybe even though let me see. There's some questions here. I'll read one question. It's, who is the observer of the all? And how do we align with that so our vibrations are localized, human, reflect the harmony of source? I mean, I don't understand that question. That is some next level stuff. I don't understand. Should I read it again? Did you understand it? I'm not trying to be condescending. It's just that's sounds like an LSD trip, which is why I'm going to bring this up. Sorry for not answering the question immediately, but I'll bring this up. I think this will.
Today, a young man on acid realized that all matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration, that we are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There is no such thing as death. Life is only a dream, and we are the imagination of ourselves. Here's Tom with the weather.
Sorry, I thought for some giggles I'd bring up Bill Hicks, and earlier, like before he says that in that show, in that skit, he's also talking about like how television programming often is all about these negative stories. So he's like, how about like a positive drug story, right? And that kind of relates to what we were speaking about, the quality of attention, and also the power differentials and all of that. But I mean, because it does really seem like in a psychedelic experience, you do see a more vibrant reality, or like more, everything is just moving much more. And is that just a hallucination? And if so, it can be explained away, or is it something that you're seeing more clearly? Like, are you kind of for a moment able to experience things in a more mind-blowing way, but also in some sense true way, like that things are really moving, are really crazy. So yeah, sorry, that comment there, is it possible to align with the observer of the all, so our vibrations are localized, human, reflect the harmony of source? I think now I'm getting it actually a bit more. It's like, can we, like, if there is like a consciousness that's like universal, can we kind of tap into that, and can we in a way be connected to source? And maybe the answer is we just always are doing that, but maybe not always like in a clear way. Maybe we're not always have a clear connection, or like a good connection with the source, or like able to see things as they are.
I think we are co-creating. The whole question is, are we being aware of it? Are we consciously co-creating. I think that's. I think there's a movie called Die Hard, and I remember the villain was. What's the villain again? English actor, but in the movie they're the robbers, and they want to get to a safe, and they have this machine, and the machine makes the vault vibrate a certain vibration, makes it vibrate somehow, and just people could walk in and out with the money. Just watch the movie. I mean, it's a movie. it's not a proof. And another thing is the Montauk experiment. That's more like undercover or black money, what do you call it? Black projects. How do you call them in America? And it's called the Montauk experiment, the Philadelphia Montauk experiment, where they have ships, submarines, they have them go to another dimension, time travel or other dimension, whatever. But when they came back, some of the soldiers or whatever, the crew members were stuck into some of them were stuck in the ship itself. I don't know if you can visualize. It was terrible. And when some part of the experiment went wrong, when coming back, some of the humans were melted in partly in the carcass of the ship or the submarine, whatever it was. And it's just the idea that at some point, if you mess with frequencies and have things travel, it's like, it's another movie is The Fly, when he time travels with the fly and they merge. It's like, maybe like moving to another.
It is in the arena of conspiracy theories. It is in the arena of I'm in a cellar making a YouTube video, and and it's really a secret. But still, that doesn't mean it's off topic. No taboo topics. I think maybe what could be fun to do. I didn't really see a lot of questions in the comment section. Not that they weren't interesting. So in the future, if you have a question for us, maybe start your comment with question. And then, or like end it with a question mark, because that's kind of what I did. I was like, is there a question mark or something?
Make it easier.
But I thought maybe it would be cool if everyone could kind of say, what did you learn in this roundtable? Like, what's something you took from it that, what's something that made you think, oh, that's actually quite interesting, or like, and it doesn't have to be forced. It's just like if you have something you feel like, oh, I really like that. I'm gonna think some more about that, or I'm gonna, I don't know. I thought that would be a cool exercise to do together.
I learned that there's a difference between detecting and observing in the quantum physics slit theory.
Well, honestly, I still have to figure out, did KRIS Nelson say, or did you say that the observer doesn't have any influence at all on the observed? Or
what's the observer? Define observer in your sentence.
Okay, when something or an intelligent being is trying to measure, quantify, does that change the outcome of the experiment? That's I thought it was really, to me,
in quantum physics, yes.
Okay.
Because you can't measure it with your eyes that doesn't interact with it. So if you're going to measure the velocity, then you're not going to know the position. If you're going to know the position, you can't know the velocity. I think that's referred to as the uncertainty principle. I might be mistaken. It's been a while since I've looked into some of this stuff. But in our world, where you can look at things and you're not going to affect it, that's just pseudo-spiritual. They want to pop psi. You take things that you think you understand, but you don't understand it, and then you're going to engage in scale confusion to apply maybe how something operates at that very small scale, and then you're going to project that through blind correspondence, a fallacy of how it operates at a larger scale.
I find very interesting how you could how you point out how ideas could be derived into fallacies, and oh, that's very convenient to justify whatever. Very interesting. I honestly, I didn't understand much of the demonstrations you. I mean, it's really. I'll listen to it again. Thanks.
A lot of people watching the show right now. Whee!
I'm kind of also still thinking about that thing about the move, like being a mover or being moved, and I'm thinking maybe there's also a necessity of being willing to be moved, or like to be in motion, if you want to be a mover, because like either way you're gonna be in motion. So in a way, I think there's also like an element of saying, okay, I kind of surrender to the fact that I am in motion, or like to that this is a truth, but that doesn't mean that I'm just gonna be a victim of it. I can actually work with it and decide what am I gonna set in motion, how am I going to move with this motion. So that like being in a way at the mercy of a higher force doesn't mean that you're a slave to it, but you still have a lot of power as someone who is in motion. You can still be a mover. Is a thought I wanted to share.
It reminds me of this little riddle, and it sounds very frivolous, but it's very. It reminds me of what you're just saying. It's the question is, what's the difference between the lucky guy, the unlucky guy? No, the lucky guy and the unlucky guy. I'm translating a bit. I know this little riddle in French, but I'm translating as I'm thinking about it. So what's the difference between the lucky guy and the unlucky guy? I'll cut it short. The lucky guy gets to everything. Gets to everything. The translation is a little strange, but he gets to everything, and the unlucky guy is not the one that doesn't get to anything, but everything comes to him, happens to him. Okay, I'll translate better. The lucky guy makes everything happen for him, and the unlucky guy is the one to whom everything happens to. Did you get the difference? It's the whole difference between being proactive or reactive. It's the whole idea of anticipation, preparedness, and
a good way to be proactive regarding our health is something you were also speaking a bit about earlier, about the food. Like, are we eating food that it has high vibration, that is like energetic? And I think that's also something we didn't really explore that much, but I thought that's something really true, that vibration is a principle that really does apply when it comes to our health. Also, just the fact we should be in motion, like we should exercise and work out, and that contributes to our health, like being being in vibration, if you can say something like that. And like music and laughter along with workout will release like painkillers, will release these endorphins. So it's not just like whoa, there's you really do feel better, like you do feel more like relieved and good after a good laughter or listen to some good music, and like there's so many effects of vibration on us, like just sitting by the ocean, and you're looking at the blue waves and how that can affect your state of mind.
Mm.
I'm just kind of ranting here. Just saying health and vibration, there's a connection.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of I want to ask you, like, should we finish the show now, or do you want to prolong it a bit more and speak a bit more about the topic?
I think we're good.
Yeah, and the next one is the principle of rhythm, right?
Yes, the next topic is going to be the principle of polarity, not rhythm.
Okay.
And in that regard, there's going to be this Thursday a group reading at Europa Natural Law Forum, and the link to that Telegram chat is in the description down below. And yes, again, the group reading will be on polarity, so we'll read a chapter, and it's about 10 pages or so, and after that we'll discuss a bit the what's it called, the information, yeah, the topic. And this time around we're gonna do it a bit later because then we can also kind of connect with the people in the US. So we're gonna be, it's like a late night evening, and then that, like here in Europe, which is Central European time, 8 p.m., 8:30 p.m., and that will approximately be around morning, midday in the US. Still Thursday midday, something like that. And yes, I think there was some really cool things brought up. I really also found it interesting, the whole thing about being able to polarize yourself at a certain mental state. Like how are you going to feel like that you have the power over that? And one really cool exercise to do is to be grateful, like to say the things that you're grateful for. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be like you're happy that something very small, but that exercise, if you do it even just for a month, it will, you can look at brain scans and you can see how it actually affects yourself. So it is really about where do we put our attention and what quality of information are we focusing upon, and blah blah blah, ranting a lot. But yeah, please, if anyone has some finishing final thoughts, share them.
Our show's coming up tonight, 5 p.m. Pacific, VGT Live at Jeffrey Phillips on YouTube. We'll be talking about the current state of the natural law movement tonight. I think Oscar's going to come. I think he might be there. Got some interesting things to talk about. Check out Light Occult Revival 2 on YouTube.
If that is it, then thank you everyone for joining. I have one last meme for the people. The entire universe is quite literally a song.
It's all vibrations, man.
Yo.
It was nice to meet you.